If you've ever 3D printed, you've probably printed a Benchy. Benchy is a little test print that goes through a bunch of different things and kind of gives you an idea how your printer performs. I really like printing the Benchy, and lately I've been seeing a lot of people do variations of Benchy that aren't necessarily going to be a good test of the printer. Sometimes they are, but they're just fun. So I thought I'd print a bunch of those today. I had some spools that were getting towards the end. Didn't really have enough on them to do anything, and they weren't colors that I had any more of. So we're going to print a bunch of Benchies and just kind of have fun with them. But first, a message from our sponsor, PCBWay. Here we are on PCBWay's site. You've got, your instant quote, CNC 3D printing, PCB assembly. They have product capabilities here listed that show you all the different kinds of PCBs and things they can do. They've got projects here that are shared, so you can go in and find things that you might want to do. But the thing that really is cool to me is they do 3D printing. When I need something printed in metal, I come here. I upload my STL or similar file. I put up what the quantity I want, design units, material, all this stuff. And you just send off the quote when it's done. Someone checks it, and once they've decided that it's going to be viable, they send you the price. Thanks PCBWay for sponsoring this video. Let's start with my least favorite. This one's an aircraft carrier, and it's got little jets on it. You can kind of see them if I get in there in the shadow. Not necessarily my favorite. Don't mind my handbook for the recently deceased. Maybe if I hadn't done it in the yellow, but I ran out of the gray. And yeah, it also had a lot of issues with I always call this flashing. I don't know what the technical term is. We'll just go ahead and stay right here in the yellows. And we've got this nice Viking ship here. This one's actually pretty fun. If you were going to use this for like Warhammer or similar, you could scale this just a little and get it to the size you wanted, or leave it as is. And nice little thing. You could paint it up pretty good and look pretty great. Up next, we have this banana boat, which I was really happy with. It doesn't have a lot of surface area sitting on the ground, so it does tend to want to fall over, but it's pretty fun. You can come in here and put some black in it, or even paint it a little, make it look more like a banana. It'd be pretty cool. Sticking with the yellow, we have this Asian or Chinese boat here. Pretty cool. Again, this one would look really good painted. I wish I would have had more gray. I would have done this in gray and you could have seen it better. But this also has fuzzy skin applied, so you kind of get that rope texture and the wood texture. You could probably print this in a wood filament and it would work well too. Although, I don't know if the style of boat would necessarily just be a bunch of brown wood, but this would be fun to come in here and paint. One more yellow here. We have this little pirate ship. Pretty fun little guy. Definitely not accurate as far as, pirate ships would have gone or just ships of that era, but still pretty fun. Maybe on this one it's pushing it for Benchy because, well, you do have the pilot house there. Sorry, this wood's pretty uneven. Well, you do have the pilot house there. It's really stretching it, looking like a Benchy, but still pretty fun. Probably again look better in a wood filament, and you can come in and paint the sails and paint the Jolly Roger. Moving right along, we've got this castle one, kind of goofy looking, but could be fun. Again, it's a bit of a stretch for a Benchy. It does have some of the features of the Benchy, but the proportions are wrong. It doesn't really have the pilot house, and some other things are missing. But again, this one could be interesting for tabletop. You could probably, paint the cannon, paint the structure, and use it as some kind of piece for tabletop role-playing. Sticking around here at the night for a minute, we do have a shipwreck one. It does come with that base just to keep it standing, but you've got a nice little tentacle here. It really does look like the Benchy. And you've got, where it hit something, you got some barnacle growth there. Pretty cool. I was actually really surprised at how well that tentacle came out. Again, you could use this for some sort of tabletop or whatever. You might even be able to print this on something and use it safely in a fish tank. Not an expert on fish tanks, so you might want to look into that, but could be pretty cool. You'd obviously have to increase the weight of it or just put some rocks on the base plate to kind of hide it, Here is a different size of that Chinese or Asian inspired one. Sorry, I had some dust on my finger there. In the olive drab, it looks a little bit better. So if you did this in a wood filament, I guess, and then came up here and painted the pilot house, it'll probably look pretty good. And while we're already on an Asian themed one, we'll go with this dragon boat here. Again, pretty cool. You do get the smokestack from the Benchy. I just noticed there's a little stringing of the filament there. You do get the pilot house, but that's about it from the Benchy. This one's definitely smaller. As you can see, it's about the size of my thumb. But if you blew this up, it'd actually be pretty cool. You could come in here and paint this, do it in all the cool colors and stuff. And yeah, it would be pretty awesome. Well, it looks like my microwave has been invaded. Now, this is the only one I did in PETG. I had just barely enough to do this, but I'm really happy with this. It's just really fun. You do have your guns. The barrels actually came out really nice. You have most of the aspects of the Benchy. You get the hole on the back. You've got the pilot house. It mostly the same. You do have the wheel in there. You have your little smokestack and everything. And then you have your front like anchor chain holes. I'm not a naval person. That was one of my half-brothers that was in the Navy, not me. So, yeah. But this one really just came out nice. I would like to see a whole bunch of these in different military configurations as Benchys. I think it'd be really cool. And I like the, I guess, the geometry of everything here. It just looks really satisfying. But yeah, that's been some cool 3D printed Benchys. Now maybe let me get this guy out of here and get some breakfast going because I'm a little hungry this morning. But yeah, that's been some 3D printed Benchys. I have printed probably, gosh, 100 Benchys at this point. Like, I print them for all kinds of things. They are a good way to test filament. They're a good way to test that you've got settings dialed in. They're a good way to test a printer. But they're also just fun, as you can see here. Obviously, these aren't as great as the standard Benchy for testing, but they're still pretty cool. And there's tons and tons and tons of these. And like I said, you could use them for tabletop or just have a little cool collection of Benchys. I do have that Benchy I printed in aluminum from our sponsor, PCBWay. You can go find that video on the channel. It was pretty cool. And I think it might be neat to look at that gunboat, that destroyer or whatever, in aluminum at some point. Not sure. I kind of want to save up and get something printed in tool steel, maybe a Benchy too. I'd really like to get one printed in titanium, but that is quite expensive. The 3D printing in titanium adds up really quick. But if you needed it for a real function, it'd be pretty cool. Anyway, that was just a fun little video. I was trying to use up some spools, and things were a little chaotic in the house, and I didn't have the time to dedicate to something more intense. But it is June when I'm filming this and putting this up. By July, hopefully, I'm able to start diving into like some really big 3D printer projects. If not, by August for sure. So stay tuned for that, and I'll see you in the next video.